All right, everyone. Hey, we even have our intro today.
It's the Monday Morning Motivator with Magoch.
Woo! So excited that worked for you.
It's
We'll just keep it on repeat until, hey, good morning, everyone. It is the Monday Morning Motivator meeting. And I'm here saying, oh no, we're done. Wait, that's not what I wanted to happen. We got to go live again. Hello, YouTube. You're totally getting this. We totally messed up here on our Facebook live feed here. We're gonna have to start over here and get back on live. If it's still sharing, I'll be super embarrassed. Is it? Oh, well, we're still live on Facebook here. Done. Live. This is painful. Please, people. I hope nobody's watching right now. Thank goodness for editing. Okay, whoops. We'll do a do-over. So apparently on Facebook Live, if you share your screen and then you unshare it, you're done. So we're not going to do that again. I thought it would be so easy to share my screen and do our Monday Morning Motivator intro, but sometimes the internet just doesn't know the way you want to do things. So good morning. We're here for our Monday Morning Motivator meeting. I'm Jessica Magoch, your host and CEO of JPM Sales Partners and creator of the Sales Launch Code. Hello, all y'all sales launch coders. Thank you for joining me. You can drop your sales questions below. I see you there, Elvin. You can drop your sales questions below and I will answer them. I specialize in startups and building startup sales strategies, especially in B2B direct sales, whether that's SaaS technologies or consulting, coaching, things like that. I built a 9-figure sales team with in my last organization. And so, through that, of course, we learned a lot about not only recruiting, building, and growing sales teams. So I have a lot to share and offer and pretty much can answer any question at this point as it relates to sales. And if I can't, I will tell you or I will put you in the right direction. So today I wanted to talk about failure and the science behind failure, and as a way to help you understand not only failure as it in your own life and how to get over it. Hold on, I'm going to share this into the group there so you guys can jump in. So we often hear about failure as it relates to how to get over failure so you can achieve everything you want in your life, blah blah blah, right? But I think this applies to so many different aspects, especially in sales and sales leadership, right? For all you sales managers out there, future sales leaders and sales coaches, learning how to coach people through their fear of failure will really help elevate you to that next level. It's one thing to be a sales trainer, to teach people how to sell. It's a total other thing to teach people how to overcome their own limiting beliefs and get through those barriers that they reach when they're in the sales process. So that's why I'm not a huge proponent of sales books and short motivational trainings and things like that, because they have limited success. And we know, if you know about learning and how people learn, if you read a book, you're only going to retain about 10% of what you've read. And then of what you see, you retain more of that, but it's only like 25 or 30%. And what you see and hear, you retain 50%. So even in a video, and most of my courses are video based, you're only going to get 50% of what I actually tried to teach you is going to stick. You'll remember it, right? But the best way to learn, as you probably know, is by doing. And we call that experiential learning. So in all of my programs, in my coaching programs, in my leadership programs, I'm not just here to deliver you information. Information is easily available, right? I can share with you the sales process and the scripts and all that, but I know it will only help you a little bit. It's when you get out there and you start doing it, and then you get the pushback, not only from your customers, but all the pushback inside yourself of the things that you're resistant to do that you need to do, but you don't want to do them, or you figure out a great reason not to do them. It's those things that I feel like is the main difference in having a 6-figure business and a 7-figure, 8-figure, 9-figure business. So that's why I don't have any books right now. People have been pushing me to write a book, and I just feel like, why? I know there's stuff I could put in there that hasn't been said already, and maybe in my own way, but I know that if you don't do it and if you don't practice with me, I can get limited results for you. So anyway, that brings us to the topic for today, which is the science behind failure, and how do you coach your sales reps over that fear, how to recognize it, and then also how this relates to your customers in the sales process. So why is failure something your customers experience, and how you can recognize and help coach them through that in the short time that you have together. Cool? All right. So as we start every Monday meeting, we'll take a moment for intentions. Make sure you remember why the heck you're building this business in the first place, why the heck you took this sales job, why you started this startup, all of those things, because when it gets hard, you need to call on the big why and the big reason why you want to do this, so that you can have that drive to move forward. Cool? So one huge motivator for me that I was reminded of this morning was when I was listening to the traffic report, bringing my kindergartner to his morning program. I heard all the traffic reports going in and out of Philly and KOP and Turnpike, and I thought, yes, that is a great reminder of why it's so important to work for yourself, make your own rules, make your own schedule. I read a quote over the weekend that said, if you don't start building your own dreams, then you'll just be hired to build somebody else's. And so that's the case in most 9-to-5 type jobs. And then that's like the epitome of the rat race, right? Like sitting in traffic. So it's like everyone's going someplace. They don't know where they're going or why they're going, but they're going, and then they're coming back, and then they'll go back again. So it's really, that's a reminder when I hear that traffic report to be like, yeah, that's also a really like great benefit of building your own thing, right? And then accountability, guys, sales launch coders, especially those of you who are in my membership program. What were your numbers last week? How many outbounds did you do? How many discovery calls? How many presentations? How many closed deals? And how many referrals? Dude, if you're not going to track your metrics, it's really just a guessing game, right? And that's no way to run a business. So you, whether an independent entrepreneur, independent salesperson, you got to you want to go someplace, you have to track your numbers, where you are now, and then calculate how to get to where you want to be. So there's only so much we can control in our business, but that is something simple that you can control, that you can do right now. So then the next question is, if you're not doing it, the question is why? You need to ask yourself that hard question. Even if your numbers are 0, that's still something you need to track, because being accountable to yourself and telling me that you did nothing, or putting it on your own whiteboard and just acknowledging that you didn't do anything is helpful, right? So hopefully your accountability to yourself is stronger than your accountability to anyone else. But if it's not, find someone to be accountable to. I'm here for that. But it could be your partner, your spouse, your parent, your friend, like someone in another business group. Get someone to be accountable to, so you know that you have someone to report to and say what you actually did at the end of the week. And if it's 0, then that's that, right? Your numbers will either inspire you or depress you. But if they depress you, I hope that fuels you to do something different this week. Better, but different, right? If you did 2 calls, make 4 calls, just something different. Even more of the same thing will get you results. Even if you're a terrible salesperson, if you make enough calls, you will get results. That's the cool thing about sales, right? Now, my goal is to teach you professional selling, so you don't have to make thousands of cold calls every month. But in the beginning, you can certainly use that as your strategy. Just work harder than everyone else, and the numbers will work in your favor. Okay. But after a while, you're not going to want to work harder, and you're going to want to work smarter. So that's where professional sales training comes in. So you're closing more of those deals more quickly. You're not getting caught in the endless chasm of follow up, but you're creating an environment where people can say yes at the time that they're most likely to say yes. So I've recently been repeating that a lot to my clients as an explanation of how I approach the sales process. Creating an environment where people can say yes at the time that they're most likely to say yes. And if you're curious about what that means and how you can get started learning in that, I have a free training that dives right into launching that in the beginning of that. And that's at freetraining.jpmpartners.com. The link, if you're on YouTube, is below this video. If you're on Instagram, it's in my profile. And if you're on Facebook, it's on my my business page. Cool? All right. So let's jump into the topic for the week. Failure. What a fun topic to talk about. But I'm launching my own new program soon, and it's one of my what I'd call a high ticket offer. So it's one of my highest level offerings. It's on the higher end of the packages that I offer. So it's for a specific clientele to help them build out their sales strategies in a duplicatable, repeatable sales training portal that we custom build for them with their custom scripts. So they can take what's working, we'll refine it together, and then they could launch it and build sales teams rapidly and have, rapid growth from there. So, when you're hiring 5, 6 new salespeople per week, you need to have a system that can get them onboarded quickly, right? And so that's what that program does. And I was, I'm in this process where I'm building it. So I haven't launched it yet. It'll be launching in a couple weeks. And I worried about failing, right? Like launching it and then nobody wants it, right? Anybody ever feel that way? Like, what if I build something and nobody wants it? Now, I've done my market research, I've done my surveying, so I know that there's a need for this in the market. There's always that fear of you'll put all this work into something and then you launch it and then crickets, right? Now, the logical side of the brain says, well, then just, do something different and change up your messaging or change up your strategy. But that's a logical answer, right? But we know our brains aren't completely logical. Our brains are mostly guided by emotion, right? So if you haven't taken my science lesson and my science behind why people buy, get the science, but our brain, the science of emotional intelligence and the study of emotional intelligence proves that information passes through the emotional center of your brain first before it hits the logical center, which is like the frontal lobe of your brain, right? So no matter how analytical you think you are or your clients pretend to be, everyone's brain works this way. You make decisions first emotionally and back them up with logic, right? Unless you're like aware of this and then you really work to rewire it. But most people, they have a instant emotional response to something. So in terms of sales, they instantly decide whether they're going to buy or not based on an emotional reaction to you, your brand, your marketing, your messaging, all that, right? Like within the first paragraph of a written piece, the first couple seconds of a video, the first moments of meeting you, or the first, couple seconds on the phone. And so they have an instant emotional reaction of like whether or not they want to continue to listen to you, or whether or not they're going to buy this thing from you. And then they look for the logic to back up that decision that they already made. Okay. So this is a huge part of what made all the difference for me when I was failing miserably at sales. So it was understanding this, but it actually made a ton of sense to me because my background training is theater. So I did 4 years of acting training, which is basically understanding human behavior and why people are motivated to do things they do. Because when a story is written, it's all about people taking actions based on their motivations. You have to understand your character's motivations and the person that they're trying to influence, what their motivations are, right? But here's the cool thing here's what I learned in acting training, was that we can control our emotions, right? An actor can control his or her emotions. So can anybody. But what big thing of what you learn is how to control those emotions or how to convey those emotions and then how to let them go. So if and there's different, acting techniques, but one of them is you get yourself in a state where you're really living in this moment of the scene. And if that affects you in a way that makes you cry, then that's okay. But and so that comes across, right? But if you're then, you leave the theater and you're still sad and depressed, well, that's not going to be much of a fun show to do. And you can't do that for a long time. So you learn that you can cry and then you can let that go and move on to another emotion and move on to another emotion, right? So it seems pretty simple from the aspect of being on stage, but then how does that affect us in our lives, right? So I actually had this like huge existential crisis in college because I realized that my life wasn't dictated by my emotions, right? Which was the case up until then. It was like if you're depending on how you feel in a given moment, you make certain decisions on that, or you judge whether or not you should do something based on your emotions about it and how you're feeling at any given time. But in acting training, I learned that those were totally in my control. So why am I letting them control my life? So then that was crazy because that changed my whole life right there. I actually went into major anxiety and depression because I didn't know if I had total control of what was going on in there. I didn't know what to put in there. So that was the first scary thing. But But so then when I got into sales, this idea of people making decisions emotionally first and backing them up with logic totally made sense to me. I didn't really have to, contend with that much because I knew from theater that was the thing that motivated people. And so even if you're in a corporate environment and you're dealing with the most analytical department, which I love to say is the IT department, right? Everyone's scared of the IT department. Even if you're talking to the most analytical, the finance, IT, they are all still, their brains work this way too. So, but then they don't know it, I promise you, because if they did, they would tell you and they'd be more aware of it. So, and then people try to, they back up their emotions with logic. So this is something cool that you'll pick up as you do it more and more and are in enough sales situations where you see people working through this process. The more analytical they come across, actually, with like the more logic they try to throw at it, like more objections they have, and what I call smart questions, like the questions that are meant to challenge you so that they look smarter. And right, you ever been in that situation where you're in a sales situation and the person's trying to make you look like less than what you are, but only for their own benefit, to say like, hey, look, I asked a smart question. Look at me. Yeah. And actually, those people are the people that they don't know it, but they're actually guided more by emotion than others. And I'll tell you why. Because they've made emotional decisions in the past and they've regretted it. So they actually they need more justification that their emotions are correct. So they'll continue to ask you questions that are like, underlying the question is always really, tell me that my initial response was correct. Tell me that my initial emotion was correct, right? So if you think about objections in that way, or questions, challenging questions you get from clients, those all fall under that underlying fear of, what if I'm making the wrong decision? Okay. And so how does this all come back into the topic for today, which is coaching people through failure, or what is failure, the science behind failure. So let's start with the clients, right? Let's start with what it means for a customer to be afraid to fail. Ultimately, when people are scared to make decisions, right? We are hardwired to protect ourselves and not take big risks as a method of self-preservation, right? We're trying not to die here, right? Like our whole lives are like, we're trying to survive and not die. And that's like the basic core, like survival is number one, right? That this is like back to caveman days, right? We haven't, our brains have not actually changed much in the thousands of years that have gone by. So like our brains still operate pretty much the same way. So we have survival instincts that say like, this decision's either gonna help you live or sudden death, right? This is called the ego, right? The ego part of your mind is everything is in terms of life, death. Are you gonna live or are you gonna die? And that's why it's in our natural tendency to avoid failure at all costs. And because the ego part of ourselves sees it as, you're gonna die. There's death in that. See that forest over there? There may be like some delicious berries in those woods and some wonderful, shelters. It's a peaceful place in there. But there also could be dragons and fire-breathing dragons and lake monsters, right? Lake monsters, squid monsters. I don't know. Anyway, there could be those terrible things that are going to kill us. So it's not worth it, right? And most times we'll choose it's not worth it. Most times people will choose to stay safe than to take that risk and avoid the actual, what inside our caveman self saying is death. So this applies to your clients too, because guess what? When they have to make a decision, even if it's on something that it seems real, totally logical, like which new, CRM to install, right? They're thinking, is this, their subconscious mind is thinking, is this going to get me more life or is it going to be sudden death? And in the corporate environment, more life is like money, recognition, promotion, right? Like, is it going to help me achieve my personal goals, more time with my family, maybe less stress? And then the death side is like, I could get fired if this goes all wrong. And we tend to go towards that safety rather than take the risk and trying something new, right? Or going with something different, right? Especially if, like in that situation, if you have a CRM that works okay, like why take the risk and totally screw everything up and then to like go towards something that could be actually even more beneficial to you. So you see now the science behind failure. It's not that we're afraid of dealing with the failure, right? Because logically you could say, well, logically what would happen is if you failed at something, you'd probably just figure out another solution when you get to that point. But the whole idea here is to help people before they get to that point, because they're not willing to go there, right? Like I could coach you, say how to coach people through failure, but it's not failure that's actually they're scared of. It's the fear of failure that's holding them back. Okay? Because when you get there, when you fail and you fail enough times like I did, you realize it wasn't as bad as I imagined it to be, right? It's never as bad as you imagine it to be. Because like I said, the ego is looking at like death. It's the worst part is like some death, or like you're gonna fail, you're gonna lose all your money, you're gonna be on the street, you're gonna take away your house, right? Like that is the worst case scenario of failing. To me, that is like, that's always a thing. Like, what if I fail and I lose everything and then I have to go live in a shelter with my kids, right? Like that's never gonna happen. Right? Like I'm resourceful, like I know that's not going to happen, but to be, vulnerable and share like even my deep, dark, fears, like that's what it is for me. So what is it for you? And if you hear me say that and you think, Jess, come on, that's not going to happen. I know, but my ego part, my subconscious part of me believes that. So what's the subconscious part of you that's saying like, what is the worst case scenario that I'm imagining that I know isn't really going to happen, but that's actually holding me back? And then it's much easier to work through that with yourself. And so with your customer, you can't really tell them like, look, I know you're scared you're going to get fired and then no one's going to hire you again. You're going to live on the streets with your kids, right? But you're not going to tell them that, but you need to understand that that's what's going on. They're afraid to fail. That's why they avoid buying. That's why they avoid salespeople altogether, is because they know they might be convinced to do something that later that will be a failure. So they don't even want to talk to the salesperson, right? Talk about sales resistance. Like, let's talk about salesperson resistance, like resistance to being sold on something. I think it's so much more interesting to understand the buyer as it relates to ourselves, right? So if you understand yourself, then you can understand your buyer better, because ultimately we're all freaking the same. We're all ruled by the same emotional, logical brain. And if you can understand that about yourself and identify and work through it with yourself, then you can identify it in your clients and your customers and help them through that process. And that free training that I mentioned before actually gives you a lot more detail of how to go, what's involved in that and how to move people from one place to another. So that's freetraining.jpmpartners.com. It's the science behind why people really buy. And that will show you how to help people get from their fear of failure to actually buying your product. But now that you understand like the science behind it, you can see that It's something that is emotionally charged. And going all the way back to the beginning of the meeting, we talked about how emotions are totally in your control, right? So if we think about what's holding you back, what is that deep, dark fear that you have that keeps coming up for you every time you consider taking a new risk, and really rip it apart, and acknowledge that it's there, but prove yourself wrong. And acknowledge that it's there, because it's going to come up again, and you're going to forget that thing is underlying, and you're going to have to go through the process all over and again, all over and over and over again. And then maybe that one will go away and another one will come up. And another deep, dark fear will come up that you have to convince yourself, like, the likelihood that there is a fire-breathing dragon in the forest is less than 1%. So I'm going to take my chances, right? And try to bring the emotion out of it and look at the logic, because it's all about your emotions ruling the nest up there. Of course, emotions go back to what our core beliefs are. So if your core beliefs dictate how you respond to something that's happening around you, or even like an opportunity that comes your way. And so then the next step is to really like uncover and dig those out, rip them apart, dissect them, look inside. It's like, what's going on in there? Is that accurate? Am I really not worthy? Am I really not worthy of success and wealth and helping other people? Is it really just not in the cards for me? Well, that doesn't really sound right. Why not me? And then look for evidence that you're wrong, instead of looking always for evidence that you're right. Right? We're always looking for proof that our idea is right, instead of looking for proof that we're wrong. Because if you prove yourself wrong in those beliefs that are holding you back, well, then there's nothing holding you back anymore. And only you can do that work. Nobody can do that for you. No motivational speaker can do that for you. No book is going to do that for you. You actually have to do the work and experience the results. Cool? You actually have to dig into that process. I think it's like, even in my program, you guys who are in there now, only 10% of people actually do the work that's associated with the course, because it's not, accredited. So there's no professor telling them if you don't hand in your assignment, you fail. So, and that's kind of indicative of the that 90-10 rule. Some people say it's 80-20. It's a lot of times it seems like more than 90-10 seems to pop up more. That 10% of people will do the things that it takes to be successful. And then it's no surprise that they are, right? So be the 10%, do the work. I just showed you some work that you can do now instead of just listening to me. Go and do the work and rip apart those parts of you that are holding you back, and decide if they're helping you or hurting you, and then prove yourself wrong. Get some evidence. Go look at, people who have paved the way before you that had, worse, situations, and they didn't, so just look for opportunities to prove yourself wrong. Know that 90% of people are going to disagree with you, because only 10% of people are doing the things that they need to do to get to where they want to be, right? Only about 10% of people are continually overcoming those fears so that they can face those risks. So don't ask other people unless you're surrounding yourself with the 10%. Don't ask other people what you should do, because they'll probably guide you in the same way of self-preservation without saying it so bluntly, right? Preserve yourself. Don't take that risk. But they'll say it in ways like that are different, like, well, if it doesn't feel right, don't do it. Well, it's not going to feel right because you're scared. So that never feels good. But sometimes fear is an indication that you should do it anyway, right? And sometimes that's an indication that you're on the right path, that you are tackling those demons that are holding you back. Though fear is not ever a reason to push back. There's a difference between a fear and a gut instinct that something is not right. And unless you can clearly identify in yourself what's an emotion and what's an instinct, then, well, first of all, instinct in the primal, sense is something that's going to help self-preserve, right? So instinct in that sense is only going to hold you back too. But I'm talking about a different, like, gut feeling of intuition versus instinct. Different, right? Your instinct's going to keep you on the path of self-preservation, and your intuition can help guide you beyond what your ego is telling you is life or death. And because not every decision, is the answer isn't always yes, right? To every opportunity that comes. But there's a difference between fear and intuition. And once you start unwrapping what's going on inside of you, then you can see if, like, this fear is caused by something that is one of those beliefs that is holding you back, that is unfounded, that it's not helping you, or if it's a fear that has to do with an intuition that this isn't the right path. And intuition, when you get a feeling that comes with intuition, is actually completely at peace, which is different from a feeling that you would get from fear, which is agitation and unrest, right? So, oh, you're welcome, Justin. So that's what I'll leave you with today. And, like Eleanor Roosevelt said, one way you can work to overcome this continual process of overcoming fear, right? It's a habit, right? A habit. So what that means is you have to put yourself in the face of failure over and over and over again, which is terrifying, but doesn't have to be terrifying. I'm not asking you to jump off a cliff today. What I am asking you to do today is to do one thing that scares you, right? She said, do one thing every day that scares you. What is that thing? And I love to do things that are not related to my biggest goals because those are extra scary to me, because the what's at stake is a lot higher. But I think of little things. So that's why when people say, like, you're involved in so much stuff, yeah, because actually the reason I do a lot of those things is to overcome little fears that I have. I go, ooh, that sounds interesting. That sounds exciting. And then I immediately am afraid to do it. And then I know that's the thing I need to do. Because whatever that, thing that, like, tugged me back, that is the fear I know that I need to keep getting over. So that's why I do, like, karate tournaments. Like, even now I just make a face because I always am like, yeah, I'll do it. And then, like, right before the tournament, like, why did I sign up to do this? Gosh, there's got to be 100 good reasons for me to drop out, right? And so those are the things that I remember, like, okay, you got to do this. This is the thing. These are the things that add up over time, and you get into a habit of failing, because sometimes you will fail, and then you realize every time, like, well, that wasn't as bad as I thought it was going to be, And then, like, my son said yesterday, he said, Mom, we lost our game today, but you know what my coach said? He said it was the best game we ever lost. And I said, why? Why did he say that? And he said, he said it was the best game that we ever played, even though we lost. And I said, you know what, Frank, that is so true, because no matter what, if you win or lose, you got better just by playing the game. And that's so hard to remember when we're in a business world, whether you're an athlete or a business person or anything where you're trying to get somewhere, and we think of things in terms of win and lose. Just having that black and white differentiation of win and lose. Like I said, the ego is life and death, right? when we create those definitions, those are man-made, right? Like win and lose was something totally made up by man that we decided was something important that we should, differentiate winners from losers, or when we succeed at something versus when we fail at it. But the unfortunate part of that is that you forget that just by playing the game, you actually got better at the game. And even if you never won a game, you're still better than the people that didn't play the game at all, right? So what does that mean? That means if you're a musician, go on more auditions. Like in acting school, it was like you can never get as good as you can get just by being on stage and doing, like, failing on stage is totally different than failing like in the studio, in rehearsal space and all that. It's different than failing on stage. In a karate tournament, failing in the dojo is totally different than failing like on the mat when everyone's watching and the clock's running and the ref's there and all that, right? Failing in a sales situation, you could, like I said, you could read all the books you want. Even in my program, you could go through all the coursework and we do everything to get you prepared, but nothing's going to teach you as much as when you actually go to apply it and have the experience of doing it. So same's true for failure. Nothing's going to teach you more about failing than doing it or risking it. Okay? So what is that one thing that you can do today? And I'm not even giving you a week for the deadline. I'm giving you a day. Today, what's one thing that you can do today that scares you? Is it sending out an email to someone you've been avoiding? Is it, sending in a resume that you've been scared to send in? Making a phone call, doing that one little thing that scares you. Is it something unrelated to your business that you can do that gets you used to taking those risks so that they're not so scary when you do them in other places, right? Okay. So, like my son's coach said, no matter what, just because you're playing the game, you're getting better at the game. So play the game. Keep doing the things that you need to do. And whether you know it or not, whether you think you're winning or losing, you're getting better every time. So that's all I got to say in our Monday Morning Motivator meeting. I will see you next week. Same time, same place, at 10 a.m. Eastern on YouTube. You can go directly to monday.jpmpartners.com. You can join me in my Facebook group, on my Instagram page, or on the Monday meeting, you'll be directed to our monday.jpmpartners.com. You'll be directed to our live YouTube viewing page. All right, everyone, have a great week. Bye.